My daughter stole her sister's husband because he was her true love. But the love lasted 2 months. I never imagined I'd be writing something like this, much less sharing it with the world. But I need to know if I'm wrong for how I feel. My family has gone through more turmoil in the past few months than most people face in a lifetime. It feels like I'm living a nightmare watching everything we've built over the years crumble because of one person's reckless actions. It all started with my younger daughter, Danielle, and the choices she made that shattered our family into pieces. Let me provide some background to make sense of it all. Our family was very close-knit. We had Sunday family dinners, celebrated holidays together, and even went on vacations every year. We believed we were raising 2 good women. Our eldest daughter, Brianna, married her sweetheart Ethan about 7 months ago. They were what many would call the perfect couple. High school sweethearts who grew up together, supported each other, and built the life many envied. They bought a beautiful home, started a family, and were living what seemed like a fairy tale. The wedding was just the icing on the cake. My husband and I always tried to instill good values in our daughters, and Brianna took it very seriously. She's a tireless worker, dedicated to her family and job, and has always been the responsible older sister. Then there's Danielle, who has always been the more free-spirited of the two. She's charming, sociable, and has always known how to navigate any situation. While Brianna focused on building a stable career and family, Danielle was more interested in living in the moment. She moved from one relationship to another without really settling down and always had a bit of a wild side. But despite all this, we never thought she'd do something that would destroy everything. 2 years ago, Danielle met Sam, a man who seemed to be her perfect match. Sam was kind, patient, and understanding, qualities Danielle often lacked. He was exactly the type of person who could balance Danielle's impulsive nature. And for a while, it seemed he had succeeded. They married in a small, intimate ceremony just over a year ago. Sam was a delightful person, and it was clear he genuinely cared for Danielle. We hoped that marriage would help her settle down and take life more seriously. Unfortunately, that hope was short-lived. It wasn't long before Danielle's restless nature began to resurface. She started spending more time away from home, often claiming she needed space or time to think. We noticed the strain this put on Sam, but he tried to keep everything normal, working hard to make their marriage succeed. We could see he didn't deserve what was happening, but we had no idea how bad things really were. 2 months ago, our world turned upside down when Brianna came to us devastated. She had discovered that her husband Ethan was having an affair. Although she didn't initially know who the other woman was, Ethan's secret came to light. He had become distant, secretive, unrecognizable from the man she fell in love with years ago. Brianna had always trusted him without question, but something had changed. She found messages on his phone, cryptic but suggestive enough to confirm her suspicions. Around the same time, Sam, increasingly frustrated with Danielle's behavior, decided he couldn't take it anymore. One night, after yet another unexplained absence, Sam confronted her directly, asking if there was someone else. Danielle tried to dodge the question at first, saying she was under a lot of stress at work and needed space. But Sam was persistent. And finally, after a tense and tearful argument, Danielle confessed. She admitted to Sam that she had been seeing someone else for months. When he pressed for details, the truth finally came out. She had been having an affair with Ethan, Brianna's husband. The revelation hit our family like a bombshell. Sam was devastated, not just by the betrayal, but by who it was with. He felt humiliated, deceived, and completely broken. What shocked us most was their complete lack of remorse when confronted. Both Ethan and Danielle didn't seem to grasp the gravity of what they'd done. Instead of apologizing or showing any sign of regret, they tried to justify their actions. Danielle claimed that she and Ethan had developed such a strong connection that it was impossible to ignore, that their relationship was something special meant to be. She spoke about how true love never goes unnoticed, as if that somehow justified the deceit and pain they caused. Ethan, on his part, insisted that his marriage to Brianna was falling apart long before the affair began and that Danielle understood him in a way Brianna never could. Both seemed to believe that their actions were somehow justified by their supposed connection. To us, their lack of guilt and inability to see the wrong in what they'd done was incomprehensible. It was infuriating. They seemed more concerned with being together than with the damage they had caused. It was as if the rest of us, their spouses, their families, were merely collateral damage in their pursuit of happiness. Danielle not only destroyed her sister's life, but also her own marriage to Sam. He had believed in Danielle, supported her through tough times, and this was how she repaid him. Brianna was also devastated. Her world collapsed when she realized that not only had her husband betrayed her, but it was her own sister who had stabbed her in the back. Brianna ended her marriage with Ethan immediately and cut all ties with Danielle. My husband and I were horrified. We couldn't believe Danielle had betrayed her own sister in such a way, and we didn't know what to do. Our family was torn apart. The consequences were immediate. Brianna moved out of the house she shared with Ethan, taking the kids and leaving everything else behind. She wanted nothing to do with him or the life they had built together. Sam also packed his bags and left Danielle, returning to his parents' home to try to make sense of what had happened. Both were left shattered, trying to rebuild their lives while Danielle and Ethan continued their affair without showing the slightest shame. As weeks passed, the situation grew even more tense. Brianna distanced herself from the family, avoiding any contact with Danielle or any mention of her. Sam cut all communication with Danielle, refusing to respond to her attempts to reach out. My husband and I found ourselves in an impossible position. We tried to reach out to Brianna to support her, but she understandably kept us at arm's length. For a while, Danielle and Ethan flaunted their new relationship on social media, posting about their true love and how happy they were. As if cheating on their spouses and destroying Brianna's marriage wasn't enough, they felt the need to broadcast it to the world. It seemed they believed that eventually, everything would calm down, that people would accept their relationship and move on, but that wasn't going to happen. Every time we tried to talk to Danielle about what she'd done, she dismissed it, insisting she was in love and that was all that mattered. She couldn't or wouldn't see the pain she'd caused Brianna and Sam. Then, 2 months into their new relationship, fate dealt Danielle a cruel hand. Ethan left her for another woman who he claimed was his true love. For him, true love seemed to grow on some magical tree. He took everything she had, her savings, her belongings, everything. Danielle was left with nothing. It was as if karma had come back to bite her, and she was devastated. The man she'd risked everything for, the one she'd betrayed her own sister and husband for, had abandoned her and taken everything she owned. He emptied her bank account, took her possessions, and left her penniless. Danielle came back to us, distraught and broke, claiming she'd been used and manipulated, but she wasn't just asking us for forgiveness. She also wanted Brianna to forgive her and give her another chance to be her sister again. She wanted Brianna, us, and even Sam, her ex-husband, to somehow understand that she had been manipulated and that she was the victim in all this. She wished everyone would simply forget what had happened and that things could return to how they were before. Danielle doesn't seem to grasp the gravity of what she's done. She keeps saying she's learned her lesson and deserves a chance to prove it, but I'm not sure she truly understands the damage she's caused. My husband thinks we should try to help her, that we should support her in her time of need, but I'm struggling to see how we can do that without betraying Brianna and Sam once again. I don't know how to handle this situation, and I don't know if I'm wrong for feeling that she doesn't deserve another chance after what she's done. So, am I in the wrong for not wanting to give my daughter another opportunity to redeem herself after she destroyed her own marriage and her sister's, causing so much pain in our family? Or should I be more understanding and try to help her in this mess she created herself? Update 1. It's been 3 days since I shared my story, and I've had a lot to process. I'm grateful that so many people took an interest in our situation. I decided to have a conversation with Brianna to see how she felt about everything. I needed to understand her perspective before making any decisions about Danielle. Brianna was very clear. She didn't want anything to do with Danielle. She didn't hold back, and I could see the pain in her eyes as she spoke. She told me that, although she's trying to move forward with her life, the betrayal still weighs heavily on her. Every day is a struggle to wake up and continue with a void where her trust and happiness used to be. She said it wasn't just the infidelity that broke her, but the fact that it was her own sister who shattered her world. Brianna had always looked after Danielle, being the older sister who was there for her through thick and thin. Having that bond broken by someone she loved and trusted so deeply is something she can't simply overlook or forgive. She's been seeing a therapist to help her process everything and is trying to rebuild her life. But the last thing she needs is Danielle re-entering it. Brianna explained that every time she sees Danielle, she's reminded of what was taken from her. The images of Danielle and Ethan together, laughing and deceiving her behind her back, torment her constantly. She's tried to heal, but Danielle's presence is like a wound that won't close. She also shared something that broke my heart even more. She's been struggling under the weight of memories and the responsibilities of being a mother. She looked exhausted, as if she hadn't slept in weeks, and I could tell the constant reminders were taking a toll on her. Seeing her like that made me feel helpless as a mother. I wanted to ease her burden. I suggested that we could take the grandchildren for a while so she could relax and clear her mind. I thought some space might help her focus on herself and get the rest she desperately needed. But Brianna shook her head and said her children were her anchor. She told me that without them around, she wouldn't function, that they were the only thing keeping her grounded. She said their laughter, routines, and even the little demands of daily life prevented her from falling into a very dark place. The idea of being without them even briefly was unbearable. Brianna is clinging to her kids like lifelines but fears the weight of everything else might still drag her down. As for Ethan, he's been trying to reach out to make amends, but she's not interested in re-establishing any relationship with him. He sent her several messages. First, apologizing and then trying to justify his actions, claiming he and Danielle were meant to be together and that their connection was special. So, apparently, things didn't work out with the woman he left Danielle for. Ironic, isn't it? Another true love for Ethan who might find a new one next week. Brianna said she feels he's trying to manipulate her again to get her to see things from his twisted perspective, but she's done with his lies and manipulations. She's made it clear they have nothing more to discuss and has blocked him on all platforms to prevent further contact. If needed, they can communicate through lawyers. Hearing all this made it clear that bringing Danielle back into her life would only cause more harm. Brianna told me she's found some comfort in therapy, where she's learning to set boundaries and prioritize her well-being. She started new hobbies like hiking and painting to keep her mind occupied. She's even considering moving to another city to start fresh away from painful memories. The last thing she needs is Danielle reopening old wounds. After talking with Brianna, I felt even more conflicted as a mother. My instinct is to protect and support my children, but I couldn't ignore the immense pain Danielle had caused. I needed to discuss with my husband how we'd handle this. He has been more understanding of Danielle, mainly because she's our daughter and he wants to see her happy and stable. He struggled with the idea of turning his back on her, even knowing what she did was unforgivable. When I shared my conversation with Brianna, he was visibly shocked. He didn't realize how broken she was. I think he hoped time would heal all wounds and the family could somehow reunite. But after hearing Brianna's feelings, he's beginning to see that maybe now isn't the right time. He admitted feeling like he's losing both daughters, one to anger and resentment, the other to her own bad decisions. We agreed that Danielle needs to take responsibility for her actions and shouldn't rely on us to fix things for her. My husband has decided to step back and stop trying to mediate between the sisters. He realized his attempts might be doing more harm than good. We told Danielle she needs to sort this out on her own. As hard as this situation is, the feedback from everyone has been invaluable. Update 2. I know many of you were asking for an update, so here it is. A couple of days after speaking with Brianna, Danielle showed up at our door again. This time, she wasn't just seeking forgiveness. She needed a place to stay. She looked rough and I could tell something was seriously wrong. To be honest, I didn't want her in our home after everything she'd done. The last thing I wanted was to welcome her back. But my husband, being the compassionate person he is, insisted we couldn't turn our backs on her, especially in such a desperate state. I knew he didn't condone her actions, but seeing his daughter like that brought out his paternal instincts. It was hard for him to see Danielle reduced to this. After much back and forth, I reluctantly agreed to let her stay, but under strict conditions. We allowed her in on the understanding that she would put all her efforts into apologizing to Brianna and Sam, especially Sam. From what we knew through his family, he wasn't doing well either. Sam had always been kind and caring and didn't deserve the pain Danielle caused. We made it clear that her stay was temporary and depended on her willingness to genuinely make amends. Danielle agreed and assured us she'd do as we asked. She promised to contact both Brianna and Sam, apologize sincerely, and start the long road to making things right. For a moment, I thought there might be hope that she was ready to take responsibility, but that hope was short-lived. Over the next 2 days, it became evident that Danielle hadn't changed. Instead of taking steps to make amends, she reverted to her old ways. She spent her time lounging on our couch, watching TV, and scrolling through her phone as if nothing had happened. She showed no remorse or urgency, no understanding of the gravity of her situation. She wasn't devastated that Ethan, the supposed love of her life, had betrayed her and left her broke. Instead, she seemed indifferent, waiting for the next opportunity. She made no effort to contact Brianna or Sam or to fix the mess she created. It became painfully clear we'd made a mistake letting her stay. Danielle was just looking for a place to crash while she figured out her next move. I couldn't take it anymore. I confronted Danielle, telling her we expected more. We'd allowed her to stay only if she agreed to make amends to those she'd wronged. But instead, she was treating our home like a free hotel. My husband, initially more sympathetic, was also losing patience. We told her she needed to pack and leave within the hour. We made it clear she wouldn't be welcome back until she made genuine efforts to apologize to Brianna and Sam, and until we received confirmation from them that she was truly trying to make things right. Danielle didn't expect us to act this way, but that's what happened. After she left, it didn't take long for her to bombard us with apologies. Within hours, she began calling, texting, leaving voicemails, all with the same desperate pleas, countless "I'm sorry" messages. She begged for another chance, insisting she was ready to change and understood the severity of her mistakes. But this wasn't the first time Danielle had made promises she couldn't keep. We'd been through this cycle before, her making mistakes, apologizing, then slipping back once the pressure eased. We told her we weren't the ones who needed her apologies. It was time for her to grow up and take responsibility. Meanwhile, my husband and I focused on supporting Brianna and Sam as best we could. They are the ones who truly deserve our care right now. It's not easy, but we're taking it one day at a time, hoping we can all eventually move forward. Update 3. A lot has happened recently, and I wanted to update you all. First, my husband and I decided it was time to give Brianna the support she desperately needed. We went to her home and insisted she let the kids stay with us for a week or two. Brianna was reluctant at first. She didn't want to be apart from them even briefly, but we knew she needed a break, a chance to breathe and sort through her feelings without the constant demands of parenting. Hiding behind her responsibilities might offer temporary relief, but it wasn't a long-term solution. After much persuasion, Brianna agreed, though hesitantly. We assured her the kids would be in good hands and that she could see them anytime. I could see it was hard for her. Those kids are her world, but deep down, she knew this was the right move for both her and the children. Not long after we brought the kids to our home, something unexpected happened. Danielle showed up at Brianna's door. We had anticipated this moment, knowing Danielle would eventually have to face her sister and attempt to make amends. But when it finally happened, it was anything but peaceful. According to Brianna, her initial reaction was pure anger. They nearly got into a physical fight. It was intense. But then something surprising occurred. For the first time, Danielle didn't try to talk her way out or justify her actions. She showed genuine remorse. She stood there, taking Brianna's anger, and when she finally spoke, she admitted she deserved any punishment Brianna saw fit. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She simply acknowledged her mistakes in a way we'd never seen. That was when things began to change. Instead of throwing Danielle out, Brianna, after a long and tense discussion, agreed to have a civil conversation. Danielle opened up about everything that had happened since Ethan left her. How he took all her money and disappeared, leaving her destitute. She had no means to support herself and didn't know where to turn. Brianna was conflicted but decided to help Danielle with this issue, suggesting they meet the next day at our house. My husband and I were surprised but relieved to see both our daughters together, especially after all that had transpired. Despite everything, Brianna still cared about her sister. Learning how Ethan had deceived Danielle didn't sit well with her, even though Danielle had done the same to her. There was a moment I thought Brianna might walk away, but instead, she did something unexpected. Remember how Ethan had been trying to contact Brianna? She decided to use that to her advantage. Brianna called him, and naturally, Ethan answered immediately, probably thinking this was his chance to reconcile. But Brianna wasted no time. She told him she was with Danielle, and if he didn't return all the money he took within 2 days, they'd go to the police and press charges for theft. Ethan's response was immediate. He started stammering and apologizing. Brianna made it clear his apologies meant nothing. He caused enough damage. This was his only chance. If he didn't comply, he'd face serious legal consequences. It was a bold move, and I could hear the determination in Brianna's voice. This wasn't about revenge. It was about holding him accountable and protecting her sister even after all Danielle had done. The call ended with Ethan pleading for more time, but Brianna stood firm, 48 hours. For the first time in a long while, I felt Brianna was taking control, setting boundaries, refusing to let Ethan manipulate her again. After the call, Brianna and Danielle sat down with a shared purpose. They weren't suddenly best friends, but there was mutual understanding. A recognition they'd both been hurt by Ethan and needed to work together. Brianna clarified this didn't mean she'd forgiven Danielle. Their relationship was still fractured. But for now, a common goal was enough. Over the next few days, we watched closely. Danielle stayed away from our home as agreed, focusing on fixing her mess. My husband and I took care of the grandchildren as Brianna had planned. Within the 48-hour deadline, Danielle recovered most of the money Ethan took. It wasn't the full amount, but it brought relief to everyone. Danielle was visibly emotional, thanking Brianna repeatedly. She acknowledged she didn't expect immediate forgiveness but promised to make significant efforts to atone. This development provided Brianna with much-needed closure. While it doesn't erase the betrayal, she can now focus on moving forward and dedicating herself to her children. We've reassured her we're here to help, and she doesn't have to bear the burden alone. Though uncertainty remains about how things will resolve with Ethan, We're hopeful this step toward recovery will help Brianna find peace. Update 4. I'm updating to share the outcomes of Brianna's and Danielle's divorces, but also to discuss something that's further divided our family. First, regarding the divorces, Brianna finalized her divorce from Ethan, and it was less complicated than expected. Since Ethan was unfaithful and we had solid proof, thanks in part to Danielle's testimony, Brianna didn't have to pay spousal support. They agreed Ethan would have custody of the kids on weekends only, allowing Brianna full custody during the week. This has been a relief for her. Her children are her anchor, and having them throughout the week provides stability. We're also pleased as it allows us to spend time with our grandchildren and be active in their lives. We don't know why Ethan agreed to this. Perhaps he's more interested in other pursuits like finding his next great love than in full-time fatherhood. As for Danielle and Sharon, they've also finalized their divorce. Without children involved, the process was relatively quick. Danielle had to pay Sharon a small amount in spousal support, though it was minimal due to their similar incomes. For those wondering, Sharon seems to be healing. While she hasn't forgiven Danielle, she's finding her own way forward. However, what's really caused a new rift in the family is what Brianna did to Danielle after the divorces. For a while, we thought Brianna was trying to forgive or at least mend things with her sister, but we were wrong. Brianna only pretended to reconcile to use Danielle's help in strengthening her divorce case against Ethan. During this apparent reconciliation, Brianna hinted that after the betrayal, the least Danielle could do was compensate for some unexpected expenses caused by her infidelity. She suggested Danielle give her part of the money recovered from Ethan. Danielle, perhaps feeling guilty or hoping to repair the relationship, agreed and ended up giving Brianna about half of the recovered money, around $22,000. But here's the twist. Once Danielle gave her the money and helped finalize the divorce, Brianna blocked her everywhere and refused further contact. When Danielle sought answers, she got an unexpected response. Not only did Brianna refuse to speak, but according to Danielle, she reacted violently, making it clear she never wanted to see her again. Apparently, she greeted Danielle with a punch and warned her to stay away or face severe consequences. When we spoke to Brianna, she said that no matter how much she thought about it, she could never forgive Danielle. She mentioned that every time she sees or thinks of her, she's forced to relive the betrayal. She even said she'd never feel comfortable having a partner around Danielle, fearing history might repeat itself. She doesn't want her children to have contact with Danielle, considering her influence negative and a risk to their values and well-being. As parents, this is heartbreaking. We never wanted such a divide between our daughters. But honestly, it's hard to say Brianna doesn't have a valid point. Even without siblings, I can imagine how devastating such a betrayal would be. My husband is equally affected. He hoped time and effort might heal things, but has now chosen to stay out of their conflict. Instead of taking sides, he's trying to be impartial and be there for both as a father. Danielle is planning to move to another state to start fresh. What do you all think? Was Brianna justified in her actions?